I'm really moved to see the roles that are in this space together and the places that you're joining from and folks that have their cameras on. It's just really beautiful to see your faces and to feel your energy. I am a little nervous. I don't consider myself a public speaker. So I'm really leaning in to my edge or like a learning curve. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity for trying new and scary things to me. As a City College student in 1996, I never could have imagined that I would be in a space like this, in a conversation like this with you all. And I guess the other thing I want to say is I hope this can be a bit of a conversation. I hope that you can access the chat to share your wonderings, to share maybe points of my journey that you connect with, or even new perspectives that I'm not considering. I really value your your energy and what you have to share. So please use the chat, use reactions, and if you really feel moved, I also welcome raised hands to join in. Jerica shared a lot about me already, so I don't want to kind of belabor my introduction, but I will say that who I am today is really informed by my multiple identities. And so I just want to kind of introduce myself by saying that I'm the mother of two incredible beings who teach me daily what it means to be evolving, becoming, growing, and healing in this lifetime. I'm the daughter of immigrants. I am a sister to a community of fierce women who are my chosen family. I'm an auntie, I'm a dreamer, I'm a creator, and I'm a humble witness in my role as an educator, as a leader in some spaces, and as a therapist or a community member guiding healing. I don't like to say that I'm a healer, but I get to witness folks' incredible effort and labor towards healing, actualizing, and becoming, and that largely shapes who I am. I'm really honored to be with you all in this way. And as I share just a bit of who I am and the many layers of connection that I navigate life, belonging to. I just want to invite you all to think about, and if possible, in any way possible, like really root into in this moment yourself, your sense of self. Right? Before you open up to hear my story and a bit of what I'm learning, I invite you to expand into this moment your layers of connection and belonging, your identities, maybe considering the ways in which you've been shaped by them. Maybe considering the ways in which you lean into, you grow and expand in them. And even the ways in which you work to create distance, right, from some. And if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, I know you've already introduced yourself, but maybe now thinking through this lens in this way, just introduce yourself again. You join as maybe a member of this community, or you join holding this role or leaning into belonging in a particular community. It would be really beautiful to see that if you feel open to sharing in the chat, and if not, maybe just holding for yourself. I do want to create some intentional time to continue. I think I'm going to hopefully do this in layers, but some opportunity to settle in, to create a community container in which we'll be engaging in thought and in opening, in inquiry, in possibility. And so I will offer for the next few slides some opportunity to settle in to our bodies, to the land, to one another. And they are just uh, um, offerings. So please feel free to engage with them however feels accessible or comfortable to you. And so I will guide us through maybe a bit of settling into our bodies. And you can zone me out and look at the slide if that feels more of what you want or need right now. But I just want to invite you to find some comfort in your seat, if that feels possible. Notice your posture. Can you give yourself a little more length so that your breath flows freely and with ease? You give yourself any movement, any stretch that you desire. You know, it's only 10:30 where I'm at, but I have lived many lives before this moment today, right? And so we are signaling to our bodies and to our minds that we're here. That takes a lot of work, a lot of practice. There's so many things that are pulling for our distraction and our energy. And so I invite you to find your breath, find comfort in your seat. Can you notice the tissue around your eyes? Can you soften them some? I invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes if that feels safe for you. Notice any places in your body where you feel tense or clenching, right? What might that mean for you? Can you offer release or softness in your jaw, your shoulders, your belly? You notice all the places in which your body is making contact with a surface. Your thighs against the chair, your back. Noticing the ways in which you're being held, rooting into the earth some. As you feel your feet on the ground, can you notice the sensations? I invite you to visualize, if it feels accessible to you, the earth beneath your feet, the richness of the soil, the prayers, the seeds, the hands that tended the soil beneath you. Can you feel connection and holding? For the next few minutes, I'm going to offer a land and labor acknowledgement. This acknowledgement was crafted by and with young people at the Rise Center in Richmond, California. It's an incredible space. I invite you to connect with Rise or take a peek at what they have going on there. And the invitation is to feel connected to your body and your breath and the earth as I share these words. I join you from unceded Ohlone, Miwok, Muwekma land, confederated villages of the Lishan. For so many of our communities, we've been disconnected, displaced, and dispossessed from our lands through histories and legacies of conquest, removal, extermination, and migration, forced and fueled by enslavement, genocide, trafficking, and imperialism. For so many of our communities, disease and illness have served as colonizing pathogens to quell and kill us, by design, and by default. And today, as we endure, resist, and survive state violence here on Turtle Island, we denounce the ongoing escalated state violence and terror going on today against our Palestinian kin living under occupation. We remember that all violence is state violence and serve in solidarity to and with all those decrying and fighting the violence of nation building across the diasporas. And many of us are also here on this land as descendants of slave-owning and settler families and classes benefiting from the fallacy and violence of white supremacy. We acknowledge the indigenous lands we are on and the land of our kin, and that we are mutual stewards of our survival and liberation. We are here today by the labor, love, and risk-taking, the tenacity of young people, right? Many labor acknowledgements acknowledge specific folks, and today I want to uplift the labor and love and hard work of young people across space and time. People who have grown up through our organizations and our schools, young people who are now our ancestors, young people who understood the assignment of justice and equity, building spaces as legacy for younger ones. We also gather here today through the unpaid, unhonored, and exploited labor of Black, Brown, and minoritized communities, of unrecognized female and femme labor, love, and unjust sacrifice. We acknowledge the systems of economic exploitation still going on today, everywhere. And we honor the fortitude, the resilience, and the resistance, the expression, the creativity, and the love, and the rage of our ancestors and our living kin. As we gather in this space, creating this space together, may we honor ourselves and each other. Let us call in and on the grace and gratitude of all the resources and relationships that allow us to be here. Inviting those words to dance in your head, in your heart, find place in your body. You take another deep, intentional breath in and exhale through your mouth. So we come back to this space, to the screen, if our eyes were closed or gaze lowered. I invite you to consider what your experience during the settling in practice was. How did it land in your body, in your mind, in your heart? What new information surfaced for you? If you can, share in the chat. Maybe a word, a string of words, an image. Yes. What were you allowed to feel in our intentional slowing down? Often I feel a resistance to it, right? I really have to bring myself to this moment, right? And constantly recall parts of me that want to wander to the past or the future, right? So what was your experience? I see gratitude, relaxation, maybe a little more grounded, right? Imagining yourself as water flowing. Thank you. Much of what I'm sharing today, I hope, is about the healing power of naming, right? Of noticing and naming. And I invite you to share in the chat before I go off on what I have planned and maybe what I don't have planned, is how might naming our experience support our ability to show up and to be more present? Yeah. So I invite you to consider that, to be in a place of wonderment around that. Yeah, to share in the chat anything that's surfacing for you. My dear sister and comrade, Dr. Nora Jones Bay, shares these words with us. And I thought it was powerful to kind of frame or provide kind of an entryway into what I wanted to share. So I invite you to read these words to yourself. I'm going to read them out loud as well. And maybe if there's any string of words that are resonating with you, I invite you to hold on to them and drop them in the chat. So if there are a string of 2 to 5 words that are you're wanting to return to, where you feel some inquiry about, or a sensation in your body as you read them, I invite you to please share them in the chat. So Dr. Nora Jones Bay says, I'm reminded of the power and purpose of naming a thing, looking it straight in the eyes and releasing the shame that silence breeds. Naming a thing is about truth telling. It is about leaning in to feeling until it transforms into words, color, or whatever shape it wants to take. It is about a deep level of self-inquiry that begins the building blocks to avoid a loving friendship with yourself. Right. And I feel like this is kind of the hype that I am really on in my life right now, is how do I become a better friend, a loving witness to who I am. And it starts with the courage to slow down, notice, and name, right? I love seeing the string of words that are resonating for you, right? A loving friendship with yourself. So there's so many reasons why we may avoid befriending ourselves, really good reasons, right? The world that we live in, the societies and the way in which it is shaped and formed, the ways we're socialized, all of that pulls us away from ourselves in so many regards. And the work to slow down and build the capacity, the muscle, the internal and external resources to like really name and hold and meet with love and friendship and compassion, parts of ourselves and our lived experience, is difficult, right? To say the least. And it's necessary. We are not our greatest selves, to ourselves, to our community, in positions of power that we hold, if we are not turning the gaze inward and supporting our own healing. So I am learning that. I did not know that for many years. Right, absolutely. I love this in the chat. Not knowing or being okay is okay, right? Yeah. Um, I don't want to ever say that judge us for not knowing. And as we are stepping into adulthood and as we are holding positions of power with young people, it is our responsibility to engage in processes of knowing. And it comes at its own pace too, right? Yeah. So I'm going to share a bit about me, hopefully not too much, but I would say that our educational journey begins the day we're born, right? And maybe even before that, possibly likely before that, right? Because we are deeply connected to lineages, to experiences, to communities. So just as much as I was shaped by the schooling environments I waded through, or the math teacher that never really figured out how to teach me, my city, my people, my many identities, and the environment I grew up in has greatly made me who I am today. I was raised in the 80s by a single mother in the Mission District of San Francisco. My community was so rich and vibrant with resistance to oppressive regimes, movement building, culture, art, music, real resourcefulness everywhere. It was a space that was multi-ethnic and multicultural, but it was also the 80s, right? Tough on crime initiatives, crack, limited alternatives to conventional learning. Um, Growing up as the daughter of my immigrant mother, I learned so much. I learned how to value and create community, because without community, we were really all we had. Um, I learned how to give. I learned how to give beyond my capacity. I learned how to hustle, how to multitask, how to be a doer. I learned how to work on behalf of those who were struggling. As I said, she came to this country, was quickly left by my father while she was pregnant. She figured out her way through community college, San Francisco State, and worked tirelessly as a, not credentialed, but as a social worker, subsidizing childcare and housing for folks that were really struggling. And it was beautiful for me to watch the ways in which she valued justice and the ways in which she used her voice to intervene on behalf of justice. Um, my mom also told me, or taught me, sorry, to value Western ideals of beauty and success and to hold on to people in our life at all costs, because as I said, we were really all we had. She taught me through her modeling that rest equated to laziness and that self-care was a luxury that we couldn't afford and didn't deserve. These lessons, this modeling, spoken and unspoken, really shaped my values and my purpose, who I have become as an educator and a mother. And, I want to say that there was incredible beauty, and there is a lot that I'm needing to unlearn that I was passed on to me, right? So my journey is largely also unlearning. Um, So I was a D+ student. My mom worked really hard, long hours. During this time in my life, during school, I felt really unseen by every adult in my life. Though I did connect with some peers, with friends, some of who are still my friends today. But school really never was my thing. I slid through the cracks in just about every way. I rolled with a thick crew of folks who also didn't really vibe with school. Um, and it wasn't to say that we didn't value education or love learning, but I'll speak for myself in saying that school, and the way that it was presented to me, felt irrelevant and impersonal, and hard. Right. So I barely graduated. I remember running to each one of my teachers to get just a D to graduate the day before we walked the stage. And just by luck, I didn't even know where I was going on the field trip. That's kind of how checked out I was. I took the city college placement test on a field trip. Um, I received zero college readiness or counseling. I remember that some kids went to Upward Bound in a room, but I didn't know what that was after school, right? So there was like bits and pieces, crumbs around me, but never for me, never to me. I was never a part of it. And when I graduated, my mom said, get a job or go to school, but she didn't share with me any pathway to either of those things, right? Many of my friends during this time were incarcerated, got into drugs pretty heavy, died by suicide. And that felt more important to me than school and traditional schooling in the way it was presented to me. During high school, though, I did find myself engaged in movement building. San Francisco in the 90s was just, there was a protest every day somewhere after school. We had Pete Wilson, who was our governor, who was trying to pass Proposition 187, which made teachers and healthcare professionals responsible for, they'd lose their license if they didn't report an undocumented client or student. Right, so jobs, healthcare and education jobs were really under attack, and folks were being forced to compromise their values in tremendous ways. There was also this 3 Strikes initiative. In San Francisco, there was a curfew that they were trying to impose. And then Proposition 21, which was huge. And so I did not engage in school, but I was full of energy and motivation to engage in direct action, art and culture, and self and collective care, though I didn't know that that's what it was called then. Right? Yeah, we got Rachel in the house. She knows Prop 21. I'm here with some comrades for sure, right? And so I felt this injustice that my mom, I had witnessed her speaking out against. And then I found a community where I could be in movement building and direct action. Here is a beautiful mural that my best friend, Amilca Mutan Fuentes, painted on Clarion Alley. And so I was engaged in that, but then not school, not at all, right? And then I found the sweat lodge and ways of taking care of my body and one another that really spoke to me. And how powerful it would have been if that was valued in the classrooms that I was forced to go to every day, right? Or if someone noticed those strengths that I carried and wanted to grow and develop on behalf of my community and my people. So as I said, I like just barely graduated. My best friend, Amika, she went to a private school. She went to the urban school, and we would compare our work. I don't even know what I was reading, but she had big textbooks and not textbooks. She had like readers that her teachers would put together. She was annotating ferociously. She was writing. She was going on college tours, and she got into UC Berkeley. And as I said, I had no plan, right? And I came across this quote years ago, when you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else, right? And so I found myself in a really unhealthy relationship with someone I had met in middle school. And I became a mom at 19. And it's weird to say I wanted this so badly. I wanted to belong, and I wanted to have someone to be with, right? Because I felt so alone. And so before I had my son, I was taking classes like basket weaving and business math and Latin Caribbean music. And I think I only earned about 12 credits in 3 years. Just never finished a class. I wanted to like be a part of the revolution. My primary goal was like getting to Cuba and being in Cuba. But when I had my son, everything kind of fell into place for me in a different way. I re-enrolled in City College, and I approached it with the same passion and fierceness I had when I was organizing. I somehow mustered the internal strength to notice that where I was going was not the place I wanted to be, and that my son and I deserved something different, something more stable. And I started to think about how I might support families, knowing that my family experience raised as a single mother, single child of a single mother, and now myself as a mother, single mother, was so difficult. And I felt a barrier every direction that I turned. So I recommitted to City College into my own growth and learning. There was a few classes I just want to shout out super quick, like sex, family, and marriage with Jenny Saboboro and Robert Clark's race, class, and gender, U.S. history with Mr. Moreno. Like these folks, they required us to really work and engage. They were engaging themselves, and I found content that reflected my lived experience and felt meaningful for me. I transferred from City College to the New College of California, which is sadly not around anymore, but they were able to take my lived experience and translate it to credit. And I think this is the only way I really made it through. So after earning a certain amount of credits at City College, I went to New College of California, where I was also able to take classes that really aligned with my interest and who I wanted to be. And they provided for me a pathway through. I saw no pathway at City College. They didn't have the same incredible pathways and supports that exist now that you all are part of, right? And so as I was earning my BA, as I was a single mother trying to figure it all out on my own, I took a job. I knew I wanted to support the wellness of young people and families, and I took a job at a small school. I was a founding teacher alongside Jerica Coffey, and we were socialized as young people in our early 20s to really work like our lives depended on it, right? To teach like our lives depended on it, to fight and to give, all as though we were at war, and who we were and what we gave was going to save and protect our young people. Um, and there's a lot of beauty in that. And I've come to see with some distance from the work just how unhealthy and unsustaining it is for ourselves, and also to model to our young people. But as I said, I started, I started in this school before I had my BA, and that connected to my own like sense of value, or like I felt like I needed to work even harder because I didn't have my BA. And I share all of this to give a bit of context that I had a codependent relationship with work. Right? I overfunctioned on behalf of the institution. I overfunctioned on behalf of the adults that didn't have the capacity to be warm and build relationship with young people. And I also overfunctioned on behalf of my students. And I connected my own self-worth and value to how much I was able to give. And if I could help my students be successful in Western, in the ways that Western society values. I myself was in perpetual crisis on every level. Our school was under attack. Personally, like as a parent, financially, like just in every way, trying to survive in San Francisco is rough and tough, right? And I was operating from a state of crisis and chaos and trauma. And I was also perpetuating it, right? But I didn't know, I couldn't name it. I just knew that my body didn't feel right. And so, with some space and time, I've come to realize how important we are, our bodies, our hearts, our minds, to the work that we do. And the institutions, I think at some point, there's ways in which they begin to share our importance, but I don't see that necessarily in the systems and structures that are presented for us, right? But we cannot heal from a dysregulated nervous system. And I want to spend some time thinking about, like in the next few slides, what that means, how our nervous system is vital to who we are and how we show up in the world, as some of the systems and structures and ways of being that we internalize or that are projected upon us through white supremacy culture that really interfere with our ability to tend to our nervous system. Right? But a regulated nervous system means an increased ability to connect, to collaborate, to be creative, to really vision our way out of the chaos and the crisis that we're wading through now. So it is so important, right? White supremacy culture is the antithesis, I hope that's the right word, to our healing. And it really keeps us in a state of dysregulation. So often for our survival, we internalize these values and we carry them forward in our family systems, and as teachers and school leaders, and folks in positions of power with young people, right? And so I want to just give us a moment to pause and reflect on these characteristics here, right? Perfectionism, worshiping the written word, one way being the right way, right? This or that, but no grayness or multitude or individualism, the right to comfort, and who has that right to comfort, defensiveness, fear of conflict, concentration of power hoarding, right? Quantity over quality, sense of urgency, right? Where do you see these characteristics in the spaces that you occupy or that you navigate? If you feel comfortable sharing it in the chat, I'm looking at the chat. I love what has been offered so far. Well, where do you see? Yeah, everywhere, right? Why schools burn people out. And then, this is a little harder, but where do we see these characteristics showing up in ourselves? Right? So often I think about the systems and structures, and then I'm like, wait, they're comprised of us. We're upholding these characteristics. And what if we interrupted them? What if we challenged them, right? And so our healing in our regulated nervous system really depends on us being able to name white supremacy characteristics, ways of being, systems and structures in our workspaces and within ourselves, the ways in which we have internalized them, right? Because often we are carrying them out and we are perpetuating them, right? I see a call to and affirming to interrupt them all, right? For me, this sense of urgency, I notice that I'm constantly kicked up in other people's storms, and I have to slow down and be like, wait, is that really urgent to me? Is that necessary right now in this way, right? And pausing, slowing down, noticing and posing inquiry has been important for me. And one of the ways that I'm beginning to interrupt and dismantle. Just want to give folks time to read what's in the chat and to share in the chat. Right, the right to comfort is one I'm seeing uplifted in the chat. Yeah. Right, folks with privilege have that right. In many of the school spaces I've been, the folks that are working the hardest are the uncredentialed, right? Are the coaches, are the paras, are the RJ coordinators, the folks from the communities that our young people are from, that have incredible capital and strength and ability to connect and relate and see beyond, right? But they're not taken care of. They're not given the resources, the training, they're not paid, they're not given the time off, they're not given the insurance, right? All these ways in which we are not really valuing folks that are working tirelessly on behalf of our young people in these spaces. Yeah. Right, the concentration of power, who is sitting at the table, structuring who we are, forming our policies. Yeah, and sadly, there's something that happens to us often when we get to these positions, right? But not always. And I just want to share a bit of like what happens when we operate from a dysregulated nervous system. We find ourselves in hypo or hypoarousal, right? That's in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. These are trauma responses. They're not bad, no judgment to them, right? They have kept us alive. They kept us moving forward. But if we are constantly in these states, like the impact on our body and our ability to dream, to vision, to problem solve, all of this becomes really heavily compromised and limited, right? I'm about like, how do we create alternative structures to what exists now? Because what exists now creates it's breeding ground for violence and pain and suffering in so many ways, right? And so I offer this to think about, like, not a way to judge or blame ourselves, but to, again, name how many of us feel like we're operating in these ways, right? How many of us in this space here feel like we're distracted from the present moment, that our to-do list is longer than, there are days in the week, right? That it's hard to drop into a place of creativity or problem solving or collaboration because we're pulled in so many directions, we're wearing so many hats, right? And then how many of us feel as though we're constantly brought to or operating from our trauma response. And we're modeling this for our young people. There's so many young people that are like, Miss Ides, I don't ever want to be a teacher. You do not make this look cute or fun, right? Like, be ragged like you? No, right? Yeah. And it deeply impacts our sense of self, deeply. Right? We're not able to accurately see ourselves if we are operating from dysregulation, if we are caught up in other people's storms, if we are in a state of urgency, because we're not effective, right? And it's the hardest thing in education when you think about burnout. And I would really say push out, right? Just as we're flipping the framing for young people who are, we don't call them dropouts anymore. That's not accurate, right? They are pushed out of these systems. I think adults and teachers are as well pushed out, right? Because you work so hard and you don't feel like you are making the type of impact that your effort should correlate to, right? Or it's not consistent often. And so when we root our value in productivity and outcomes over process, over connection, over collaboration, then we often feel inadequate and leave the profession.
Or you have a question, I think,
Oh,
from
yay.
Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel. Hey.
Yeah, hey, no, I was just saying, yes, me. I feel what you were saying. Like, when you're giving and giving. And also, my daughter, who's 10 now, said, "Oh, mommy, I don't want to be in that position. And I'm really trying to clean up this karma in this lifetime, like, hopefully in the next 5 years."
Yes. Yeah. And I see you doing it too. Yeah. Yeah, I see Jerica uplifting like connection, right? Finding your people in this work is so sustaining. There were points, I also have been in education for about 20 years in various capacities. And there were points where I worked incredibly hard, but it didn't feel like I was working so hard because I was in this space of shared vision. There was momentum. It was like real community and connection. But then there are other times where it just like I would come home and just melt into my couch. And, you know, it was traumatic to be in school spaces. You know, I love the work of Gabor Mate, and just want to name that his work, you know, is not brand new, right? Many of our communities have known this for generations. This is ancestral wisdom and knowledge, right? But when we are not tending to our nervous system, when we are operating constantly from a place of dysregulation, when we're not attuning, we're not naming and offering ourselves the space, the slows that we need, it really does show up in our bodies, in our hearts, in our relationships, right? This is, you know, so our people have known this forever, and science, Western science backs it up, right? In our bodies, we can feel, you know, a tiredness, a lack of focus, uh, heart racing, inflammation, tense muscles, pain, right? Most of the United States lives in states of chronic pain, right? And they say that your body is the first messenger. It is the first notice that we are compromising boundaries, that we are working beyond our means, that we don't have the support that we need, right? In our hearts, in our relationships, it also shows up in really profound ways. It shows up in our work as well, right? There is incredible beauty in anger. So I don't want to share anger here in this way as a bad thing. But when we're constantly operating from a place of anger, it can cloud our ability to be present to the joy and the beauty that is all around us as well. Right. So as you're kind of looking at this chart, I wonder, like, how does this mirror your experience, or how doesn't it? What does it make you wonder or want to know more about? Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Jerica's affirming the importance of our presence, right? Being present. Yeah. Rachel Raman, who writes a lot about grief, she says that we are so full of grief and other strong emotions that there's no room really to feel the other things, right? And it's not our fault. It's we are wading through institutions that expect us to walk on water, right? To expect us to do the impossible. Yeah, I'd love to hear in the chat how this resonates with you, what it makes you wonder, or your community, right? Yes, our body, absolutely. First our body, and then our mind makes up a story about it, right? And our thoughts, then comes our thoughts, yeah. Can be a sign that we're not present, get stuck in focusing on what's unfair, right? And that's our trauma response, right? To keep us out of danger, to keep us safe, we hyperfixate on what's unfair because we have to for our survival, we may believe, right? But sometimes we can let down that trauma response and we don't need to walk with it. And if we don't slow down, we don't get to cue to our nervous system. We don't get to tend to and offer it what it needs so that it can calm down a bit, right? And not work so hard in service of our safety. Yes. You know, so I want to share this. Many of us are probably familiar with this. This is the ecological model of health. So, as much as possible in challenging and dismantling white supremacy, it's also challenging the Western, the medical model, right? The way that we look at disease and illness and suffering. Right. This is a public health model that really uplifts the ways in which we are dependent on one another, and that our individual and personal wellness, our harm, and our healing is tightly dependent on each other, on our environment, our place in our community, the systems and institutions. And sometimes the ecological model will stop there. And I love Rise's version here, that adds the layer of legacy of our ancestors, of, you know, um, historical trauma, but also historical wisdom, right? If we carry our trauma in our DNA, which science is, affirming, we also carry our healing in our DNA. We carry medicine and the path forward in our DNA as well. And this ecological model uplifts that, right? And so I wonder, in my work now, I like to think about and be in conversation about how we might build our muscle to hold the complexities and the tensions that arise from like seeing the world and being in the world, right? We think about this deep desire for healing, for calm, for rest, and for ease. It is our birthright. We deserve it. Our young people deserve it. And we're wading through systems and structures, a political climate that really necessitates our fighting, our resistance, right? And our forging a new and different way. And so, like, how do we hold both the harm and the healing, the potential, right? And actually what has not, the potential is what might come, but what is in this moment. I wonder how we call upon our lived experience and our true knowing and our ancestral wisdom to support our healing. And that's a question I'm posing here. I don't have, I'm learning and I'm open to information, but I don't have the answers yet, right? So I ask you, right? How do we acknowledge the healing potential of our environment, of our ancestors and our legacy, right? As you think about that, I invite you to like recall the many layers of connection that you rooted into this morning at the beginning of our talk, right? What pathway has already been forged, or where are the ancestors? I think about cultural wealth theory, Tara Yasso's work, and how passed down to us are the values, right, that support us in building and nurturing community, the resistance, our social capital, right, our familial capital. And a lot of that is not valued in white supremacy culture or Western values. And so how might we tap into these layers, right, to connect and call forward the wisdom or the new way, or recall the old way, right? Love to see in the chat what's surfacing for you as you're thinking about this, right? The internal resources, the lineages and relationships and communities, the systems and structures. We're thinking about finding more ease or regulating our nervous system in a way that is sustaining. What might we tap into? I guess that's my question. What might we tap into? Um, Yeah. Stacey Hines' work. She is someone that has like made very popular and like articulated a lot of the somatic healing work. She speaks to how incredibly important safety, belonging, and dignity are, right? That we cannot heal from a dysregulated nervous system, and we will continue to feel dysregulated if we are not experiencing, creating, protecting a sense of safety, belonging, and dignity. And I wonder, how we might do that for ourselves and in the spaces we reside. For our young people, as you're thinking about the classrooms that you'll create, the relationships that you'll nurture, right? The adults that you'll support in doing this work. How might we shift from the individualism, right? The sense of urgency to creating spaces that are safe, emotionally, intellectually, physically, where a sense of belonging is cultivated and protected, and that our young people and your dignity is honored, right? So I have this practice, it's called a collective journal. If you have a hard time accessing this document, you can just type it in the chat, but it's kind of cool. It's an anonymous way to write, to think, to feel, to kind of surface your wisdom, and the information that wants to be seen to you in this moment. So as we engage in it, there's a link in the chat. I invite you to click on the link. Really like surrender to it if you can. Don't think about perfectionism at all, right? Just you don't need to write in full sentences, but I have a few questions. And then if these questions don't resonate, you can just kind of free flow what's surfacing for you now. So I'm gonna play some music, and we'll take about 4 minutes to write to these questions. Right? If your nervous system could speak, what might it tell you? Okay, you could just write to that. And then there's kind of some layers to kind of think into or feel into. What is its experience as your primary receiver and perceiver of external experience and information? How do you work in service of a regulated nervous system? How might you support your regulation? Thinking about the ecological model, thinking about safety, belonging, and dignity, right? And then what are the challenges that you see, that you feel and experience in supporting your nervous system, right? And so I see people are writing in the chat. A few people are ready. You can think this to yourself if that feels more accessible, but it's pretty rad to see folks' journals. And I'm gonna play a bit of music, and I was talking a lot, so we have now 3 minutes. Teach me how to love you better, better. Teach me how to love you better, better. Am I in love, or am I just feeding? I stick out my hands to the earth, mouth full, still wanting. Am I in love, or have I been greedy? I make my demands to the dirt, but what am I giving? Teach me how to love you better, better.
My great did seeds in their cornrows, plotted with land they'd never owned. Where we come from, soil is sacred, not a paycheck. The less we want from all, the freer we get. I pledge allegiance to the sun's warm hands. Release my grief to the water and the sand. You heal us, you always provide. I take for granted how you keep us alive. How can we slow down? Can we spread the harvest around? Can we turn the lights way down? No machines dig our hands in the ground, slow down. There's always enough to go around. The great sure knew how. No machines dig our hands in the ground. Teach me how to love you better, better. Teach me how to love you better, better.
Take about 30 seconds to you finish up your thought, if you're thinking it or if you're writing it. And if you are finished, or if you're finished, I invite you to kind of scroll through the journal. There was about 8 of us that gave this process a try. And so I thank you for however you engaged. But there's, if you're looking at the collective journal, I'll uplift some of what I see, and you see your own experience mirrored. I think that that's powerful, right? Because oftentimes, especially with self-care, we can, and we're conditioned to do this, blame ourselves for not caring for ourselves good enough, right? Not protecting our peace. But when you think about it through the realms of the ecological model, you see just what an attack on our nervous system is that we're enduring, right? And how hard it is to find calm presence. And a a regulated nervous system is not a constant state of peace. It's that when you are activated, you can befriend your emotional experience and come back to a space of centered, with some effort and intention and co-regulation with others. Right. So I see folks in the collective journal just sharing how, how normalized it is to operate from a space of dysregulation and from our trauma responses, right? That we're uplifting the ways in which our school spaces necessitate this, right? The entering into grind culture that has a pace that's like inhumane, right? How do we find humanizing relationships? How do we value our own humanity when we're wading through these spaces? It's quite difficult. I see some folks making really powerful effort on behalf of their nervous system. And this really stands out to me here is my nervous system would say, what you're doing now is enough. Right? It's really powerful. I want to give opportunity to unmute and invite folks to share what the experience was like, looking at the collective journal, looking at your community, the folks here in this space, and what they're writing, or just like, what is your experience in this moment thinking about these questions? Anybody feel open to unmute and share?
I can always share.
Beautiful. Thanks.
How are you?
Well,
So when it comes to belonging, especially for the early childhood education community, sometimes it's difficult as a male and minority male, um, because education in general is so female coded. And, that's from the student experience as much as it is as from the teacher experience. And so, what that means is that, with the exclusion of males in the community, it's hard to build community, find community, and develop that sense of belonging and inclusion. And it seems like you know part of that it certainly involves like sexism, but certainly that intersects with racism too. And I feel like sometimes we need to recruit more to develop our sense of belonging, in the early childhood education, and then also more advanced education like K-12 as well. Um, because otherwise what happens is that at the very extremes of the exclusion, you get sort of like, kind of the criminalization of men, become part of the institution of education, like the school to prison pipeline that targets, males early on in their education, all the way through so that they don't become teachers. So they don't, you know what I mean? So they cannot participate in community and feel a sense of belonging. And so this is something that comes up for me. And I'm probably one of like maybe two or three, men here. So I feel a little bit vulnerable. Um, but certainly I've experienced that, in my life. And for me, it's it develops like a I've had instances of like specific experiences of like trauma in education, but it certainly develops like for me like a more complex trauma, because where do I have a voice when I feel like I'm like essentially like falsely accused and excluded from the start. And then I've had experiences in education where I've been falsely accused by a female student, and that's the traumatic experience that I've had. And not just another way to exclude male educators going forward for a lot of people in the community and in education. And so, you know, um, one of the things that I would like to see is more recruitment of male educators, um, so that uh, students at a very young age become kind of, just comfortable being around teachers that are men, so they don't feel like, oh, they can, you know, kind of easily exclude that teacher by pushing them out in a sense, like, essentially like bullying them out of the system because they're men.
Thank you. Thank you, Robbie, for your vulnerability and your naming, right? So many things you just named. And you really use the ecological model beautifully to talk about what you're noticing in your own experience as a male educator and in the field of education. And, I had not considered the school to prison pipeline as, being a huge deterrent in, building the male educator workforce, right? But it is so deeply connected. I've thought about, the ways in which the school to prison pipeline causes so much harm, but not specifically in that way. So I really appreciate the intersectionality of your sharing and your noticing. And yeah, and I hope that we can all collectively, like not just male-bodied people, think about how we can support men in the field of education safely, their safety. I have 3 minutes left, and so I have 3 quotes I wanted to share in the next 3 minutes. Let's see which one I will share. I I encourage folks to read healing justice, like literature, or listen to it in podcasts, because it really does offer beautiful alternatives to white supremacy ways of viewing a thing, and of problem solving. And so I'll say that there. And I think I'll come to this poem here. This is a beautiful poem by Adrienne Marie Brown, and I'll read it to you. Invite you to think about who you are as I read this poem, this idea, this truth that you are enough. Who you are is enough. You are a miracle walking. I greet you with wonder in a world which works to own you, your joy and imagination. You have chosen to be free every day as a practice. I can never know the struggle you went through to get here, but I know you have swum upstream, and at times it can be lonely. I want you to know I honor the choices you made in solitude, and I honor the work you have done to belong. I honor your commitment to that which is larger than yourself and your journey, to the particular container of life that is you. You are enough. Your work is enough. You are needed. Your work is sacred. You are here, and I am grateful. Maybe as we started, I invite you to take a deep breath in if that feels accessible to you. Allow those words to settle in your heart, in your body, in your tissue, your bloodstream. And I really do thank you. I thank you so much for allowing me to be in this space with you and to share. And I hope to continue to be in conversation with you in some way. So.
Thank you so much, Oriana. We appreciate your wisdom, the ways that your talk is a call to action for us, leaders in the field, growing the next generation of educators, folks entering the field. You know, our charge, you've given us our charge to rethink how we're orienting toward the work. And just really appreciate all that you brought forward in this session with us. As we close out, I want to mention a few things that I put in the chat for everyone. So Oriana mentioned, this charge to engage with healing justice work being done in our communities. I put a couple of links in the chat. And I also put in the chat, or one of the things I didn't say in the introduction is that one piece of the work that Oriana, that you do is this sort of national clearinghouse of trainings that are free for education professionals. And those of us really wanting to think about how we can center health and wellness in our pedagogy and our teaching. And so Oriana has, I don't even know, probably hundreds of trainings that you've done over the years that are all online. They're available to people. And so I hope it's okay, Oriana. I didn't ask, but I just dropped it in the chat just because it is everything I've attended that you've facilitated has been so enriching and powerful, just like this session. So I put that in there for folks. And Ori, I don't know, can you go back to the slide with your email in case people want to contact you and continue being engaged? And also just want to let people know that the recording for this session will be available at Teach for the Bay website. And I'll also send you a PDF of Oriana's slides in case that might support you on your journey moving forward. And also just want to close out by saying there are many more offerings for the next few days from now until Saturday to enrich you, to support you along your journey becoming the next generation of educators and education leaders that we need for our children and our communities to be healthy. And so please consider attending a workshop later this afternoon. Tomorrow we have workshops all day into the evening, and Friday as well as Saturday. A wonderful, a couple of sessions on Saturday, and wonderful closing panel with educators sharing their experience in the field. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close our session. I don't know, Tracy, did you want to say any final words as we close out?
Just thank you, Oriana. It was really beautiful, and I really appreciate your session. And for folks, you know, we encourage people to use the recordings, and there's so much, you know, there's so much beautiful work that can continue to be done. So just thank you, everyone, for being here. Oh yeah, we can leave the chat open for a little bit, Jerica, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat that I didn't get around to making time or space for, and I wonder, yes, I wonder how we can carry this forward. I don't know. The question I dropped into the chat here, it's around like how to connect to ancestry when you don't have that information. And so I just wanted to uplift it somewhere, and I'd love to be in conversation around it.
Yeah, one of the things I was hoping to say, but we ran out of time, and this could have come up in the Q&A, but if the person is still here who asked the question, I think it's a great time to be in education as an educator, because especially in the Bay Area region, there's so much going on, but it's happening all over, where people are thinking about the ways that healing has been engaged historically in communities, bringing that forward. There's education collectives that people are starting all over the place that are thinking about wellness and healing. And so there, and even if some of the, I'm glad that you dropped your link, Oriana, because a lot of the trainings that you've done have been places where you've brought forward, you know, academics, scholars, community thinkers that are, you know, to grow our knowledge base. So there's so much out there to connect with. And I think at one point I wrote, you know, start seeking it, and it's going to come forward. You're going to find it. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there, because it is an amazing time to be a teacher, because there's so much knowledge production out there right now, and conversations happening, and research, and so forth. So, and Oriana is a part of that. That's why we're so happy you joined us, Ori.
Thank you. With the babies. I hope you all have a really beautiful day. Thank you all.
You too. Nice to see the kids.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Your students. Hi. Oh, that was great. That's really beautiful. Hi.
Yes.
How y'all doing?
Hi. They're reminding us why we're here, right?
Exactly.
They're reminding us why we're here. Thank you, Roger, for sharing all of the beautiful faces with us. Yes. Hi.
I hope you're having a good day. Looks like you have your backpacks on. Can you hear me? Hi. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, I love the silly faces. Love the silly faces.
All righty. So you'll email me the link to the recording.
Yes.
And then a link that Susan can download, and I think we're good.
Okay, wonderful. And I'll put the slides. I'll send everyone the slides who's in the
awesome. Who
list.
registered?
Yeah,
Okay.
who registered.
Oh yeah,
And
the slide deck would be good too. Then I'll put
Yeah.
that somewhere. I forgot about that.
okay, awesome. So
Okay.
I'll get you that. I think she just has to pull out her notes, and we can share that with people. Thank you so much.
Oh, we're still actually recording.